Over the past 3 years, the Institute of Migration Studies at Jigjiga University in Ethiopia, Esurv Consults in Ethiopia, and the German Institute of Development and Sustainability have partnered to evaluate an inclusive training program implemented by the GIZ in Ethiopia. In this TVET training program, refugees and host communities are trained together in public colleges, and they attend a training in a variety of occupational fields. So while the aim of the training is to improve the employability of the participants, improving or fostering social cohesion is also an explicit goal. Ethiopia is the third largest host of refugees in Africa, with more than 900,000 refugees in the country, and most of these refugees are living in a protracted displacement situation. Ethiopia has internationally committed to improve the lives of refugees, including a range of promises such as access to tertiary education and work permits.
We've conducted this joint study in the form of an impact-oriented accompanying research format, which means that we have closely collaborated with the practice partner, which is the GIZ in that form, and have continuously exchanged with them on results that we find in order to ensure joint learning from both sides. And in that study, we have collected qualitative and quantitative data in 2 different settings. One is in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, which is a very urban setting where refugees can move relatively freely. And the other one is a refugee camp setting in Asosa, where refugees are limited in their movement abilities, and also that means the exchange with the host community. Let me give you a quick snapshot on the results that we'll discuss in more detail in the coming minutes of this inclusive TVET program. So we do find very positive effects on several dimensions of social cohesion between refugee and host community. However, we find relatively weak to no effects on employment and income, which also only materialize for certain groups.
In our study, we haven't found a supporting evidence of employability of the program. However, we have found very interesting heterogeneous effects. For example, participants who have been engaged in housekeeping and welding sectors have higher probability of finding jobs. And in addition, we have found that men have higher probability to work compared to women, and also we have found that refugees have a higher probability to find jobs than the host community members. And these findings can be explained again by the sectoral choices of the participants. It has to be noted that the KEP training program has increased significantly the probability of getting employment in the informal sector for both refugees and the host communities.
The GIZ training had an innovative element. It was an inclusive TVET training, and they had the goal actually to have some effect on social cohesion aspects. We approached this phenomenon using the definition that the IDOS team developed on social cohesion, and analyze the impact of the trainings on the different elements of this concept. And this allowed us to understand what particularly is affected in terms of social cohesion, and learned precisely which impact it has on what in order to improve the theories of change of the project. And I think in terms of results, we have 3 main results that are interesting. The first one is that there were no negative effects. Some people might expect that there are negative effects because people joining these trainings are de facto competitors in the labor market. The second aspect is that it was very remarkable that on a large number of elements of the social cohesion concept or the social cohesion, there was a positive significant effect. And the last point is that this was true for both groups, for the host and the refugee community, but the effects were particularly strong for the refugee community.
So based on these results, we have several policy recommendations to share. And to begin with, we recommend that national and international actors carefully consider the structural conditions in Ethiopia, including the absorption capacity of the market and also the legal barriers, particularly for the refugees, to participate in the formal labor market. This is a significant step for the TVET programs and similar programs to perform.
So at the same time, it's very important to discuss those structural limitations and to talk about it openly in order to prevent unrealistic expectations, for example, by participants of the college, college management, but also with donors or the international community.
We also recommend, if necessary, increasing the efforts to expand the legal base for the refugees, which, for example, includes giving access to work permits, business licenses, but also the financial means.
Overall, this inclusive TVET program improved social cohesion dimensions between refugees and host community. However, it's an open question whether this is then the most efficient tool in order to improve social cohesion if its primary goal of TVET, meaning the employment and income effect, is very weak or materializes only for certain groups.